It's autumn in the Wildbrooks. The Wildbrooks is a large wetland area of boggy grassland and woodland in West Sussex. At only 1 to 2 metres above sea level, the Wildbrooks serves as a floodplain for the River Arun. The river traces a serpentine path through the Arun Valley, and the winter rain that falls on the South Downs ends up in the Arun and collects here. Access is restricted to the Way South path, which runs through the centre of the marshland and can be very boggy all year round. Lack of access means the Wildbrooks is often empty of people. From November 2019 to February 2020, I decided to get up from my desk every now and again and film what I could see in the distance. What I found were healthy-sized herds of roe and fallow deer and lots of birds. The Wildbrooks is a protected wetland habitat, an internationally important site for rare invertebrates and breeding waders. The soft green grassland is crisscrossed by a network of ditches, dug in the 1800s for drainage, but now supporting a wide array of rare wetland plants and insects. Over half the aquatic plants found in Britain occur here. Here and there, rushes add a darker tone to the fields, revealing the damp conditions underfoot. Elsewhere, dark green patches of willow and alder have formed miniature wet woodlands. In areas where there's been less grazing, greater tussock sedge is thriving. It's late autumn in the Wildbrooks, and rain is slowly transforming the landscape. Soon, where the roe and fallow deer roam, large numbers of wildfowl will seek refuge and food on the water. In places, wet scrubby woodland will add another interesting habitat for many warblers. The Wildbrooks is an ancient landscape and still feels like a magical place. Our forebears thought so too, and there are several Bronze Age tumuli in the woods on the high sandstone ridge, which offers stunning views across the Wildbrooks to the south. Bogs and swamps were often seen as spiritually significant places in ancient times. When most of the country was still covered in the great wildwood, wide open spaces underneath the stars, with swampy ground halfway between water and land, bogs like the Wildbrooks were seen as gateways to the spirit world. It's winter in the Wildbrooks, and rain has transformed the landscape into a vast freshwater lake. Flocks of wintering birds have arrived. 102 species have been recorded here. This year there are ducks and geese, including pintail and gadwall, along with teal, widgeon, shoveler and lapwing. Amberley Wildbrooks is covered by many designations, including Special Area of Conservation and Site of Special Scientific Interest. The water meadows are managed by Sussex Wildlife Trust and the RSPB. It's an internationally important part of the Arun Valley Ramsar and Special Protected Area. Sussex's wintering flocks of Berwick swans number just 3 this year. Research suggests that Berwicks are starting to shun the western part of their winter range as climate change warms it up. They're choosing instead to remain further east. Hen harrier, red kites, buzzards, sparrowhawks and kestrels live and hunt on the Wildbrooks. 156 species of flowering plants have been recorded here. The Wildbrooks is surrounded by woodland which is home to many species of birds and bats. Bats often fly over my head in the evenings and scan me with their sonar. Cattle graze the water meadows in the spring and summer, but for now it's home to herds of semi-aquatic roe and fallow deer. They aren't stuck, they're just working out who's going to go first. A combination of controlled flooding, grazing and hay cutting are used to manage this wet grassland to create the perfect conditions for wintering wildfowl, if not always for the deer. The Wildbrooks is an ancient mystical landscape that's constantly in flux. It's populated with wild animals of all kinds, and has filled human beings with awe for thousands of years.